Thanks, Natalia, for the overview of the 5E approach. And I would now take the liberty to double click into the effectiveness layer because that's what Tulna focuses on. And over the next 15 minutes, along with my colleague from IIT Bombay, Dr. Sahana, who has been the founding architect of this approach, we would try and give you an overview how Tulna approaches effectiveness evaluation and why it was started and what is the heart of the evaluation framework. Those three things we'll try and cover. So I think number one, if you read this from bottom to top, all EdTech investment transformation start with the first step of which technology, and within the technology, which product to select. Then we move to the implementation, and then we go to the impact and monitoring layers. But the first step is where Tulna realized that a lot of the transformation journeys were not fully informed. And the specific use case that Tulna focused on was on governments, because in multiple countries, India being one huge country spending over 300 million every year in EdTech investment, just the government figure, I'm not talking about the private figure. This first layer need to be better informed for the rest of the transformation to work. And we realized there were 2-3 challenges that were coming. One, the hardware standards, hardware specifications were still easier to standardize and codify. Whereas the software or the learning solution, nobody had a easy off-the-shelf evaluation methodology that they could use across all selection procurement situations. Number two, efficacy or outcomes from previous program is a gold standard, but typically that requires heavy time and cost investments. So it is not helpful upfront. Can we get an answer with 80-90% accuracy upfront, which can guide forward-looking decisions? And third, many of the quality assurances that were floating around are often sponsored by product and companies themselves or some form of alliance of product companies. How do we bring a more unbiased, neutral, academic approach to these effectiveness evaluation? Those were largely the 3 challenges that Tulna set out to address. And as we went around, we saw there were 2 big stakeholders who became the beneficiaries or users of these evaluation. Number one were all the large institutional investors in EdTech, government being the biggest one. So they ran a standard procurement process. The Tulna's framework allowed them a standard objective way of evaluating the bidders on quality of their learning solution. So we worked with number of governments here. And just to give you a context, a state government in India is roughly talking about 10 million learners, 50,000 to 100,000 schools. So almost a country in itself with their own board, with their own curriculum, and languages change. So this framework had to be easy to contextualize as we move from one government to another to make it really usable for their context. At the same time, as we were doing these evaluations, we realized many product companies, especially the early to mid-stage ones, found the in-depth effectiveness evaluation very helpful for their future product roadmaps. So using this, they could plan what they need to improve in their products and take them up in the next round of iteration. So those were the 2 big beneficiaries, and that was the why. With that, I'll just move into what is the heart of the framework that we use at Tulna, and will request Sahana to introduce that part.
Okay, thanks both. Hi, everyone. So before I dive into the details of EdTech Tulna and the heart of the framework, I want to actually add to this point that Subodh just made about the selection of the right product. And why design-led? Why is Tulna focusing so much on the design? So there are 2 reasons actually. One is that we want to ensure a stable foundation, which is provided by the design evaluation. So the Tulna model actually focusing on this foundation, what the Tulna model does is it paves the path for program evaluations later at scale. Okay? The other reason, it goes to the science of how people learn, how technology works, and the science of any sort of educational project or any scientific project, that we want to get an understanding not just of the what, not just are there good outcomes, what was the learning outcome, but also of the how and the why of the effectiveness. So when we understand the design of the product well, and by design I mean not just the technology part, I'll just come to that in a few minutes, but if we understand the pedagogical design, the way the content and pedagogy and technology have been woven together, once we get to the heart of how the product is designed, that will help us understand why certain learning outcomes occurred, whether they were successful, or if they were not successful, what led to it, what other parameters could be involved, and so on. Okay, so that's sort of the basis of EdTech Tulna. I also want to connect to a point that Natalia made right in the beginning. I've actually written that point down. I really liked it. That every EdTech tool is different, but we need a common way to think about their evaluation, right? So in some ways, it looks like this is a contradiction. We want to cater to various EdTech tools, various types of design choices, yet we need a common language. And this is exactly the contradiction that Tulna tried to address when we started this journey about 5 years ago. And one decision we took, one way we did this, is firstly understand the landscape of the EdTech use cases. For example, what you see on the screen, on the left-hand side, we have things for the teacher. This is one way of categorization or framing the whole landscape. On the right-hand side, you have solutions which are for learners. And then you have use cases like teacher supports, digital instructional aids, connected classroom, self-learning. Within it, you have TPD solutions on one end, interactive AV solutions, and then you have PAL, you have read-alongs. So we have a gamut of such solutions. So we tried to put the landscape in some sort of in some perspective, try to categorize it. And then we realized that there are some evaluation criteria, some dimensions which are common across all. And then there are some which are very specific to use cases. So Tulna has a large number of criteria split into different dimensions, which are largely common, but there is a section in each of the indices which is use case specific. Okay, so that's how we try to address this seeming dichotomy. So let's go to the next slide, where maybe what I was saying can be made a bit more concrete. Okay, so the product design of Tulna is evaluated using an index that has three major dimensions. And the first one is the content quality, which is sort of the first thing that pretty much everyone, by everyone I mean the teachers, the SMEs, the people who are like really thinking about learning, they start with, is there high quality content? Because if the content is not accurate or wrong, or is ununderstandable, then no amount of technology or even fancy pedagogy can get you there, right? The next dimension is pedagogical alignment, which ensures that that there is the right and the high quality and the suitable pedagogical strategies that have been used for the given content and for the given grade range, for the given subject, and so on. These strategies are informed by research in the learning sciences, human-computer interaction, educational policies, and so on. And the third dimension is technology and design, which is sort of which holds everything together. It ensures that the product design is easy to use, safe, accessible. A lot of HCI principles come into play here. Each of these, so totally these three dimensions are also, they comprise 10 clusters, so that both evaluation becomes easy, and comprehension of the evaluation report is also meaningful. So the dimensions are split across the three dimensions, the clusters are split across the three dimensions, as you see on the slide. I'll just call out a couple of things. Actually, yeah, let's go to the next slide. The third layer is where we go into the comprehensive evaluation, is related to the criteria. So we had the three dimensions. Each dimension has some number of clusters. And each cluster has a certain number of criteria, again related to that particular cluster and dimension. And you see some of them, I'll just call out a couple. For example, under content, I talked about content accuracy and clarity. That's not just for the information in the videos, but also in the assessments and any information that's present. Language comprehensibility, which takes into account context very much, because even if it's an English medium school, when it's in India, depending on what kind of a school it is it urban, semi-urban, which state, what sort of common language is used, the language comprehensibility, the accent, the tone, all of this becomes important. Let me also call out a couple in, okay, I'll just do a few others. Inclusivity in representation. We need to make sure that the learners actually feel seen and heard in terms of the way they look, in terms of the way the food they eat, the gender, and so on. Technology and design, intuitive to use, is a very important cluster. It has criteria related to navigation, pace, accessibility is important, and safety is important in today's age. Next, please. Okay, pedagogy dimension is the one that has most of the clusters. We want to ensure that there is a learner-centric approach being followed. We want to ensure that there's meaningful assessment, feedback, and practice. Tulna also looks at cognitive engagement. It looks at adaptivity in the learning pathways, which is very important when we have personalized products and so on. Next slide, please. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so I think I'll hand this back to Subodh with a note that Tulna is not just the framework, which has some catering to the different use cases, but it also comes with an entire toolkit behind it. So I think, Subodh, this is a good place to hand over.
Thanks, Anna, for that detailed overview of the framework. And while framework is the heart of what we do in effectiveness evaluation, we realized to do them at scale and to do them consistently, we needed to add a full layer of toolkit behind this framework. So I think now the 4 or 5 layers that we have developed, and we are in the process of automating them further. Number one, as we mentioned, for every state, every government, every situation, framework needs some level of contextualization to their curriculum, their languages, their context in which they want to learn, as well as contextualization based on the use case or the technology. It's a self-learning product or a classroom product. So both those contextualization have to be done upfront, and all that is now configured. Okay, these are the 10 things you need to tweak to arrive at the customized answer for this context. Second, this evaluation is run by teachers or SMEs, and in order to equip them to do it correctly, we have now standardized a 2-day training module, combination of instructional videos, hands-on practice, so that they all can interpret and score the criteria consistently after that training. Number 3, beyond the dimension, cluster, criteria, and the 3-4 checkpoints or indicators within each criteria, what we have is a very objective scoring rubrics, so that my interpretation versus Hana's interpretation on any particular indicator is not different. We follow that exact rubrics to determine whether the product will be termed as a potential to improve or an exemplary product based on the rubric description. Number 4, we realized that a lot of the quality really came from the sampling methodology and the way the inter-rater variance needs to be controlled in few situations. So that methodology is now standardized before the results converge to a particular rating for a particular product. And last one, now we have, even to make these evaluations more seamless in live procurement situations, automated the score compiler. It's a Excel-based macro right now, and we are trying to launch a web-based tool as well that procurers can use or even product companies can use for self-evaluation going forward. With that, I will just pause what we wanted to quickly provide as an overview of Tulna and just recap two things. One, as Natalia mentioned, there are quite a few frameworks now trying to address effectiveness in a structured way. The 3-4 things where Tulna really tries to differentiate. Number one, it should be easy to contextualize for any situation, any government, any curriculum, any product. Number two, given the people who designed Tulna and the way it was conceptualized, the weightage on pedagogy dimension is one of the highest, and not just the tech or the safety or the design, but how effective is the pedagogy? Is it addressing all the misconceptions that might creep in for a learner at that grade, that subject level? So that still has the highest weightage in the framework, unlike most others. Number three, the evaluation, while the entire thing is standardized in a toolkit, is run by a teacher or an educator so that that subject matter expertise is never forgotten while interpreting these criteria and these evaluation matrices. And number four, the toolkit to make this easy to implement in any given situations. I think those are the 3 or 4 things we have tried to build to make it more applicable in as many scenarios as possible. With that, I will pause here for a minute. Happy to take any quick questions or move to panel discussion. Alatrika, as suggested.